a werewolf shifter audiobook written by Catherine Stewart. Prologue, Blood Moon Rising. The ancient words found her first in dreams. When the rogue claims the crown, kingdoms will either burn or bloom by her choice alone. Olivia Gray melted deeper into the warehouse shadows, pulse thundering as heavy boots struck concrete. 3 years of staying invisible, and tonight, they tracked her down. Pine and wet leather drifted through stale air, too refined for street mercenaries, too dangerous, Alpha. Hier Wolf stirred beneath human skin, recognizing a predator that made the others seem like house cats. She'd caught whispers about him, the Alpha King stalking through the city. Some claimed he'd come for the mating auction. Others murmured about a hunt, something specific he needed to find. Olivia had never put stock in prophecies. The footsteps ceased, silence stretched out. I taste your terror, little Wolf. The voice rolled like distant thunder, commanding and primal, authority that made her bones ache to surrender. But there's something else. She pressed her eyes shut, cursing the crimson moon hanging overhead. Of all nights to be cornered, when mate bonds struck like lightning, when wolves lost all control, when ancient predictions supposedly awakened. Step into the light. Not a request, a decree vibrating through her DNA. Olivia's lip curled in a soundless snarl. Death before submission. She'd learned that lesson watching her mother trust in Alpha's promises. Love had been the trap. The bond, sacred supposedly, became the weapon that destroyed everything. Never again. But as she shifted to flee, the impossible happened. Hier wild, feral Wolf, the part that trusted no living soul, suddenly yearned. Pine and leather wrapped around her senses like silk. And for one terrifying heartbeat, stepping toward him felt like stepping toward salvation. No. The word barely escaped her lips. Yet crimson moonlight poured through broken windows. And prophecies, she was discovering, had claws that found their mark whether you believed or not. He emerged from the darkness. Her world shattered and rebuilt itself in an instant. Golden ice, fierce and lethal and impossibly familiar. They looked at her like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking his entire life. Chapter 1, The Hunter's Moon. The taste of betrayal still lingered on Olivia's tongue as she wiped down the sticky bar counter for the third time tonight. Sweat and spilt whiskey created a cocktail of desperation that hung thick in the air of Murphy's Dive. A place where humans came to forget and shifters came to hide. She'd been running for 3 years now. And tonight felt different. The two drunk wolves at table 6 were getting louder. Their scents rolled toward her. Territorial musk mixed with cheap cologne and bad decisions. One wore a Letterman jacket that had seen better decades. The other kept flexing his hands like he was imagining claws. I'm telling you, Derek, that rogue bitch is around here somewhere. Letterman jacket slurred, his voice carrying over the jukebox. Boss says there's a bounty big enough to buy a whole pack territory. Olivia's hand stilt on the glass she was cleaning. You sure it's her? How many rogues can there be in this shithole city? Derek scratched at a tattoo snaking up his neck. A pack mark she didn't recognize. Because rogues like her didn't stay alive long enough to learn every pack's signature. Picture matches, dark hair, green ice, scar through her left eyebrow. Letterman jacket pulled out a crumpled photo. Olivia Gray, goes by human names mostly. The glass slipped from her fingers, shattering against the floor. Both wolves turned toward the sound, nostrils flaring. Olivia forced her heart rate to slow even as her wolf clawed at her ribs, wanting to run. She'd learned to mask her scent years ago, a trick that kept her breathing when other rogues ended up in shallow graves. Careful there, Sweetheart, Derek called out, his eyes lingering too long on her face. Those green eyes of yours are pretty enough to cut glass. A cold smile played at her lips as she bent to collect the shards. Good thing I'm not clumsy with everything. The men laughed, already forgetting her as their attention turned back to their hunt plans. But Olivia's mind raced through escape routes and emergency stashes. 3 years of careful planning, and now some bastard had sold her location. The question was who? As she swept glass into the dustpan, her phone buzzed against her hip. Unknown number. In her world, unknown numbers meant 2 things, death threats or death warnings. They're coming, Stone Claw Pack. Boss took payment. get out, now. Her blood turned to ice water. Marcus, the only person from her past stupid enough to still care whether she lived or died. If he was warning her, the threat was real. Last call, gentlemen, she announced. Her voice steady despite the earthquake happening in her chest. Already? Night's just getting started, Letterman jacket protested. Bar closes when I say it closes. She pulled a baseball bat from beneath the counter, solid ash wood that had connected with more than one skull over the years. Drink up or get out. The wolves exchanged glances. Something in her tone must have convinced them because they drank their beers and stumbled toward the exit. Derek paused at the door, turning back with a predator's grin. See you around, Swiss Art. The door slammed shut behind them. Olivia waited exactly 30 seconds before moving. Her emergency bag was hidden behind the false wall in the storage room. Cash, fake IDs, a silver blade that had saved her life more than once. Her hands shook as she grabbed everything. 3 years of building a life, finding steady work, almost feeling normal. Through the grimy window, headlights swept across the parking lot. Not the drunk wolf's beat-up truck. Something sleek, expensive, the kind of vehicle that screamed alpha money. Her phone buzzed again, different number. The mating auction is tomorrow night. Every unmated female in the territory is required to attend. By order of the Alpha King. The message included an address, a warehouse on the industrial side of town where desperate wolves went to sell their daughters to the highest bidder. Olivia stared at the screen, her reflection caught in the black glass. Green ice white with fury. The scar through her left eyebrow, a reminder of the last time she trusted an alpha's promises. She deleted the message and shouldered her bag. But as she reached for the back door, footsteps echoed in the alley. Heavy boots, multiple sets. The scent of leather and pine drifted through the cracks in the wood. Too clean, too powerful for street wolves. Her blood froze. Alpha, not just any alpha. The kind that made other wolves bare their throats without thinking. The kind that commanded armies and crushed rebellions. The kind she'd spent 3 years making sure she never encountered. We know you're in there, little Wolf. The voice rolled through the darkness like distant thunder. Come out and this doesn't have to get messy. Olivia's lip curled back in a silent snarl. She'd rather die than submit to another alpha's will. Her mother had tried that once. Trusted, loved, believed in the bond that was supposed to be sacred. The betrayal had cost her everything. I can smell your fear. The voice continued closer now. But I can smell something else too. Through the gap in the curtains, she glimpsed a shadow moving past the window. Tall, broad shoulders, the confident stride of someone who'd never questioned whether he'd get what he wanted. Wolf stirred restlessly, recognizing a predator far more dangerous than the mercenaries she'd been dodging. But underneath the fear, something else flickered. Something that felt dangerously like curiosity. The back door exploded inward. Chapter 2, The Warning. Earlier that evening, before the drunk wolves and death threats, Olivia had been pretending her biggest worry was whether the ancient coffee machine would survive another shift. Now she was staring at 3 pack enforcers crowding her tiny storage room, their eyes glowing amber in the dim light. The one in the center stepped forward. The owner of that commanding voice. Even in the shadows, she could see he was built like he'd been carved from granite and bad intentions. Dark hair, strong jaw, and eyes that seemed to strip away every lie she'd ever told herself about staying hidden. Hello, Olivia. Her name on his lips sent shivers down her spine. The wrong kind of shivers. Sorry, friend. Nobody here by that name. She hefted the baseball bat, knowing it would be about as useful as tissue paper against trained killers. You want Olivia? Try the phone book. He tilted his head, studying her like she was a puzzle he was looking forward to solving. Marcus sends his regards. The bat slipped from her numb fingers. Marcus, sweet, loyal Marcus who'd grown up in her mother's pack, who'd watched her world burn and somehow still believed she deserved saving. If they had him, where is he? The words came out sharper than intended. Safe, for now. The Alpha, because there was no doubt that's what he was, took another step closer. He's the one who told us where to find you. Lise. Marcus would die before giving her up. She'd seen him take a beating for stealing bread when they were kids. He didn't have a choice. The alpha continued, reading her thoughts like they were printed on her forehead. Your past has finally caught up with you, little Wolf. There are debts that need paying. I don't owe anyone anything. But even as she said it, memories clawed at the edges of her mindestens her mother's screams, blood on pristine white marble. The alpha hoot promised them protection and delivered destruction instead. Victor Donovan thinks differently. The name hit her like a physical blow. Victor, her mother's mate. The alpha hoot seduced Eleanor Gray with promises of love and security, then discarded her when politics demanded a more advantageous alliance. The alpha hoot been responsible for her mother's death. Victor's dead, she whispered. I made sure of E.T. his son isn't. The alpha's smile was sharp enough to cut. James Donovan has taken over the Stoneclaw pack, and he's very interested in settling old family business. The room tilted sideways. She gripped the doorframe to keep from falling. James, Victor's hire. The spoiled Prince Hoot stood beside his father and watched Elena Gray bleed out on the pack house steps. Hoot laughed when Olivia had begged for her mother's life. What does he want? Justice for his father's murder. Justice? The laugh that escaped her throat was bitter enough to poison groundwater. Your boss killed an innocent woman because she refused to step aside for his political marriage. Justice would be his head on a spike. That's not how the Pack Council sees E.T. Then the Pack Council can kiss the alpha moved faster than thought. One moment he was across the room, the next his hand was around her throat. Not squeezing, not yet, but the threat was clear. Careful, little Wolf. Your mother's crimes don't excuse your own. His scent enveloped Hia. Pine and leather and something uniquely male that made her Wolf whimper with want. This close she could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. Could feel the barely leashed power radiating from his skin. For one insane moment, she wanted to lean into that strength. To let someone else carry the weight she'd been hauling for 3 years. The thought terrified her more than his threats. Get off me. Each word dripped ice. He studied her face for another heartbeat, then stepped back. James is offering you a choice. Come willingly, submit to pack justice, and your friend Marcus lives. Run, and we hunt you both down. Some choice? It's more than most rogues get, true. Most rogues ended up as cautionary tales whispered around pack fires. But Olivia had never been most rogues. I need time to think. You have until tomorrow night. He turned toward the destroyed door, then paused. And Olivia? Don't even think about running. We'll be watching. The enforcers filed out, leaving her alone with the wreckage of her carefully constructed life. She sank to her knees among the scattered cash and fake IDs, her hands shaking so hard she could barely dial Marcus's number. It went straight to voicemail. His voice, bright and cheerful, asking callers to leave a message because he was probably off getting into trouble somewhere, if only. She tried 3 more times before accepting the truth. They had him. Her only friend in the world was paying for her sins. Outside, an engine roared to life. She stumbled to the window in time to see a black SUV disappearing into the night. But not before she caught a glimpse of the driver, the alpha, watching her through the tinted windshield with those golden eyes that seemed to see straight through her carefully constructed defenses. Tomorrow night, they'd set the mating auction. Olivia closed her eyes and tried to remember her mother's face. Elena Gray had been beautiful, kind, trusting. Everything Olivia had trained herself not to be, and it had gotten her killed. The smart thing would be to run. Take what she could carry and disappear into the underground network that helped rogues stay hidden. Let Marcus pay for her mistakes, because that's what survival looked like in their world. But as she stared at her reflection in the broken window, she knew she wouldn't. Because some debts were worth dying for. Chapter 3, The Betrayal. The mating auction was exactly as degrading as Olivia had expected. Vase, actually. She'd been stripped, scoop bait, and shoved into a white dress that might as well have been a for sale sign. The other women, most barely old enough to understand what they were signing up for, huddled together like sheep waiting for slaughter. "Next lot," the auctioneer announced, his voice echoing through the warehouse. "Unmarked female, aged 22, excellent breeding potential." A girl with tear-streaked cheeks was pushed onto the platform. The bidding started at $5,000 and climbed rapidly. Olivia's stomach churned as Alpha's inexpensive suits evaluated the girl like livestock. This was what her world had become. What it had always been, underneath the pretty lies about mates and destiny. "You came." The voice behind her was familiar and unwelcome. Olivia turned to find James Donovan approaching, flanked by 2 guards. He'd grown since she'd last seen him, filled out. But his eyes still held the same cruel gleam that had haunted her nightmares. "You didn't give me much choice?" "No, I suppose I didn't." He circled her slowly, taking inventory. "You look good, Olivia. Rogue Hood agrees with you." "Bite me." He laughed. "Still got that fire." "Good. It would be disappointing if prison had broken you completely." "Prison?" She kept her voice level despite the rage building in her chest. "Is that what we're calling the last 3 years? You murdered my father. Some might say you got off easy. Your father murdered my mother. Politics. Your mother knew the risks when she chose to interfere with pack business." The casual dismissal of her mother's life, of Elena's worth, sent white-hot fury through her veins. She loved him. She was a complication. Olivia's hands clenched into fists. "And what am I, unfinished business?" James nodded to his guards. "But that changes tonight." The guards moved closer, boxing her in. Around them, the auction continued. More girls, more degradation. More proof that wolves like James saw women as currency to be traded. "Here's what's going to happen," James continued, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You're going to walk onto that platform. You're going to submit to the bidding. And when I buy you, because I will buy you, you're going to spend the rest of your very short life making amends for your mother's betrayal." "You mean your father's murder?" "Same thing." The girl on the platform was sold to a gray-haired alpha who looked old enough to be her grandfather. She was led away, still crying, to a future that would likely kill her within a year, if she was lucky. "Your turn," one of the guards said, reaching for Olivia's arm. She pulled back. "What about Marcus?" "What about him?" "You said if I came willingly, he'd live." James' smile was all teeth. "I lied." The words hit her like a physical blow. Marcus was already dead, had probably been dead before the alpha with the golden eyes had even found her at the bar, her only friend, the only person who'd cared whether she lived or died, gone. "You bastard." The words came out broken, raw. "Sticks and stones, little Wolf." James gestured to his men, "Take her up." The guards grabbed her arms, but Olivia barely felt their grip. Marcus was dead because of her. Another person destroyed by her family's curse. First her mother, now Marcus. How many more would die before this ended? They dragged her toward the platform where the auctioneer was already announcing her lot number. The crowd of alphas turned to study her, their expressions ranging from curious to predatory. But as she was pushed up the steps, something changed. A ripple of awareness swept through the warehouse. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. The auctioneer's voice faltered. Even the guards holding her arms tensed, their grips tightening instinctively. And then she smelled it. Pine and leather, power and barely leashed violence. The scent that had haunted her dreams since last night. "Gentlemen," the voice carried easily through the suddenly silent space. "I believe there's been a mistake." The crowd parted like the Red Sea, revealing him striding through the warehouse with the confidence of someone who'd never met an obstacle he couldn't crush. The alpha from the bar, the one with golden eyes and promises of destruction. But now, surrounded by his natural element, she could see what she'd missed before, the way other alphas automatically stepped aside. The deference in their postures, the fear barely hidden behind respectful nods. This wasn't just any alpha, this was the Alpha King. "Your Majesty," James stammered, stepping forward. "I wasn't aware you were attending tonight's auction." last-minute decision. Those golden eyes found Olivia on the platform, and something electric passed between them. I'm here for her. The bottom dropped out of her world. No, this couldn't be happening. She'd run from pack politics, from alpha dominance games, from the kind of power that destroyed everything it touched. She would not be claimed by the most powerful wolf in North America. I'm afraid that's not possible, James was saying. This female is mine. The word echoed through the warehouse with the force of an alpha command. Every wolf in the building, including James, instinctively bared their necks in submission, except Olivia. She stood frozen on the platform, staring at the Alpha King who just claimed her in front of every major pack leader on the continent. And deep in her chest, in the place where her Wolf lived, something stirred. Something that felt dangerously like recognition, like coming home. Chapter 4, Lightning Strikes. Following the Alpha King's declaration, chaos erupted in the warehouse like spilt gasoline meeting flame. Every wolf in the building felt it, that electric shift when destiny decided to play God with mortal lives. Olivia's world tilted sideways. The mate bond hit her like a freight train derailing at full speed, ripping through every defense she'd built over 3 years of running. Hier Wolf, wild, feral, trusting no one, suddenly recognized home in those golden eyes staring up at her from the warehouse floor. No, 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 no. There's been some mistake, James stammered, his face pale as moonlight. This female is property of Stoneclaw Pack. She's here to answer for crimes against me. The Alpha King's voice cut through protests like a silver blade through silk. And I choose mercy, mercy. The word tasted foreign on her tongue, bitter as hemlock tea. Because mercy was what her mother had begged for on her knees while Victor Donovan stood watching. Mercy was what Elena Gray had died believing might save her daughter's life. Mercy was the lie Alphas told before they destroyed everything you loved. Your Majesty, you don't understand, James pressed, desperation creeping into his tone. This rogue murdered my father in cold blood. Pack law demands, pack law. The king stepped closer to the platform, each footfall echoing like thunder in the sudden silence. Which pack law would that be, Donovan? The one that says unmated females belong to whoever claims them? Or the one that says the Alpha King's word supersedes all others? James's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. But Olivia barely heard the exchange. Because the bond was spreading through her veins like liquid fire, rewriting her DNA one cell at a time. Hier Wolf was purring, actually purring, for the first time since childhood. The betrayal of it stole her breath. Get out, run, now. She spun toward the back of the platform, seeking escape. But 2 more guards materialized from the shadows, cornered, trapped between James's greed and the king's claim, between one cage and another. What's your name? The question came from below, spoken in a tone she'd never heard from an alpha before, gentle, as if her answer actually mattered. She turned back slowly, meeting those impossible golden eyes. Does it matter? You already own me, apparently. A smile ghosted across his lips, not the predatory grin she expected, but something softer, dangerous in a completely different way. I don't own anyone. I'm asking your name because I'd like to know what to call the woman who's about to turn my world upside down. The honesty in his voice nearly undid her. Olivia. The name slipped out before she could stop. Olivia Gray, Gabriel Thorne. He executed a slight bow, a gesture of respect that no alpha had ever shown her. And you're coming with me. Like hell I am. The warehouse erupted in shocked gasps. You didn't refuse the Alpha King. You didn't curse at him in public. You definitely didn't do both while standing on an auction platform in a dress that cost more than most wolves made in a year. But Gabriel's smile only widened. Interesting. Then, faster than thought, he was moving. One leap carried him onto the platform beside her, close enough that his scent, pine forests, and morning rain wrapped around her like an embrace. Close enough that she could see the silver scars threading through his dark hair, battle marks from a war she'd only heard whispers about. You can come willingly. He murmured, voice pitched for her ears alone. Or I can carry you out over my shoulder. Your choice. His proximity made thinking impossible. The bond humped between them, urging her to step closer, to lean into that solid warmth, to finally stop running. The urge terrified her more than James's threats ever could. And if I choose neither? Then we find out how fast you can run in that dress. Despite everything, the chaos, the fear, the weight of 3 years crashing down around her, laughter bubbled up her throat. You want to chase me? Little Wolf, Gabriel's eyes darkened to molten gold. You have no idea. The challenge in his voice sent shivers racing down her spine. This was dangerous territory, the kind of dance that ended with surrendered freedom and broken promises. But as James shouted orders to his men and the crowd pressed closer, Gabriel held out his hand like an anchor in a storm. Trust me, 2 words, simple, impossible. Because trust was what had gotten her mother killed. Trust was a luxury rogues couldn't afford. Trust was the first step toward becoming someone else's possession. But those golden eyes held something she'd never seen before in an alpha's gaze. Not ownership, not dominance, recognition. Behind them, James was rallying his courage. I don't care if you're the king himself. That bitch murdered my father and I'll see her pay for. Gabriel moved like lightning. One moment he was offering his hand. The next he had James by the throat, lifting him off the ground with terrifying ease. Call her that again. Gabriel's voice dropped to a lethal whisper. And find out what happens when you insult my mate. Mate. The word detonated in Olivia's chest like a bomb. Because hearing it spoken aloud made the bond real. Made this nightmare she'd stumbled into her new reality. Let him go, she heard herself say. Please. Gabriel's eyes flicked to hers, searching. Finding something that made him release James with a disgusted sound. We're leaving, he announced to the warehouse at large. Anyone with objections can take them up with my counsel. He turned back to Olivia, hand still extended. Waiting. The smart thing would be to jump off the platform and run. To disappear into the underground and pray the bond would fade with distance and time. But Marcus was dead because she'd run before. Because she'd chosen safety over courage, survival over standing up to monsters. And Gabriel Thorne, Alpha King or not, was offering her something no wolf ever had, a choice. Slowly, her hand found his. The moment their skin touched, the world exploded into color and sensation. The bond snapped into place with an audible crack that echoed through the warehouse, and suddenly she could feel everything. His heartbeat, his wolf, the fierce protectiveness radiating from his skin like heat. She could feel how much he wanted her, not as a possession, not as a price, as a partner. The realization shattered something inside her chest. Hold tight, Gabriel murmured, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. Then they were moving, him leading her down from the platform with the kind of command that made crowds part like water. But with each step, one thought echoed louder in her mindestens: what had she just done? Chapter 5, The Hunter Becomes Hunted. Following their explosive exit from the warehouse, Gabriel found himself questioning every instinct that had led him to this moment. Specifically the ones that had made him claim a rogue he'd been hunting for 3 days. His wolf was practically singing with satisfaction, rolling in the connection like it was fresh grass after a long winter. But his human sight? That was still trying to process what the hell had just happened. Mate. His wolf purred the word like a prayer. Gabriel had stopped believing in mates around the same time he'd stopped believing in fairy tales. Sometime between his father's death and his coronation at 25, when he'd learned that power was currency and love was a luxury kings couldn't afford. But the moment Olivia Gray had stepped onto that platform, something primal had awakened in his chest. Something that looked at her green eyes and scar-marked skin and whispered, finally. Where are we going? Olivia's voice cut through his thoughts as they pushed through the warehouse doors into the cool night air. Somewhere safe. He kept his grip on her hand, gentle but firm. Because despite the bond humming between them, she was still a flight risk. He could smell the adrenaline rolling off her in waves. The scent of a wild thing calculating escape routes. Safe from what? Or should I say, safe from whom? Smart. Too smart for her own good, probably. But Gabriel guided her toward the black SUV waiting at the curb, his security detail falling into formation around them. James Donovan won't give up easily. And there are other wolves who'll see our bond as either opportunity or threat. Our bond. She tested the words like they might bite her. Is that what we're calling this cosmic joke? Gabriel paused with his hand on the SUV door. You feel it too? It wasn't a question. The connection between them was too strong to ignore. A live wire of attraction and recognition that made his teeth ache with the need to mark her. To claim her properly. I feel something. She admitted, sliding into the leather seats. But feeling something doesn't mean I have to like E.T. fair enough. He'd basically kidnapped her from an auction where she'd been about to be sold like livestock. The fact that she wasn't currently trying to claw his eyes out was probably a minor miracle. Tell me about James Donovan, he said once they were moving through the city streets. What's to tell? He's a psychopath who inherited Daddy's pack and Daddy's grudges. Olivia stared out the window at the passing lights. Victor killed my mother. I killed Victor. James wants revenge. Circle of life in the Wolf world. Gabriel's hands clenched involuntarily. How old were you? When Victor murdered my mother, 17. Her voice was steady, matter of fact. Like she was discussing the weather instead of trauma that would break most wolves. How old were you when you became king? The deflection was smooth, practiced. But Gabriel caught the tremor in her scent. The Wolf equivalent of a flinch. 25, my father died in the Shadow War. Honorably, I assume. Depends on your definition of honor. Gabriel watched her profile in the passing street lights. He died protecting wolves who would have gladly sold him out for a better deal. Something shifted in her expression. You sound bitter. Do I? He considered that. Maybe I am. Power has a way of showing you exactly how loyal people really are. Is that why you claimed me? Some kind of power play against James? The question hit harder than it should have. Because part of him, the part that had learned to see every interaction through the lens of politics and strategy, had definitely considered the implications. Claiming Olivia Gray publicly would send ripples through every pack in North America, the Alpha King taking a rogue mate? It challenged everything the old guard believed about bloodlines and breeding rights. But that wasn't why he'd done E.T. No, he said simply. I claimed you because my wolf recognized yours. Your Wolf. She finally turned to look at him. What does your human half think about all this? Gabriel met her eyes, seeing his own confusion reflected there. My human half thinks I just made the most dangerous decision of my life. For what it's worth, I agree with your human half. The SUV turned into the private drive of his safe house, a converted mansion on the outskirts of the city that most wolves didn't know he owned. Gabriel had bought it under a false name years ago, back when he'd still believed he might want somewhere to escape the crown. Now, it was about to serve as a prison for a mate who clearly wanted to be anywhere else. This is where I live when I need to disappear, he explained as they pulled up to the front entrance. No pack politics, no council meetings, no one trying to marry their daughters to the king. How refreshing. Her tone was dry as desert sand. A cage with better thread count. Gabriel turned to face her fully. You're not my prisoner, Olivia. Really? Because I'm pretty sure I didn't volunteer for any of this. You took my hand. I made a tactical decision. There's a difference. Probably true. But Gabriel had felt the moment their skin touched, the way her wolf had sung in recognition, even as her human side recoiled. The bond was real, whether she wanted to admit it or not. What would it take? He asked. For what? For you to give this a chance. Not the mate bond. I know that's beyond your control. But this. He gestured between them. Getting to know each other. Finding out if there's something here worth fighting for. Olivia studied his face like she was searching for lice. You really want to know? Yes. Prove to me that you're different from every other alpha I've ever met. Prove that you see me as more than a pretty trophy or a useful alliance. Her voice turned sharp as broken glass. Prove that you won't throw me away the moment keeping me becomes inconvenient. The pain beneath her words made Gabriel's chest ache. Because he could see it now. The careful walls she'd built. The way she held herself like she expected betrayal. Someone had taught her that love was conditional. That protection came with a price. And if I can't prove that, then you let me go, Gabriel nodded slowly. Deal. Relief flickered across her features, quickly hidden. Just like that? Just like that. He climbed out of the SUV and circled to her door. But fair warning, I don't give up easily. Neither do I. As she stepped onto the gravel drive, the wind shifted, carrying her scent directly to him. Wild roses and storm clouds, and something uniquely her that made his wolf pace restlessly beneath his skin. 3 days ago, he'd been a king with a kingdom to run and enemies to outsmart. Now he was a man trying to convince his fated mate that he was worth the risk. Gabriel had faced down rogue packs and political coups. But somehow this felt like the biggest challenge of his life. Chapter 6, Unraveling Truths. Following their arrival at Gabriel's safe house, Olivia found herself in the most luxurious prison she'd ever inhabited. Which was saying something, considering she'd spent 3 years living in storage rooms and abandoned buildings. The guest bedroom he'd shown her to could have housed a small pack. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked manicured gardens. The bathroom had a tub deep enough to drown in, and faucets that probably cost more than she'd made in a year bartending. It was beautiful, comfortable, everything a captive could want, except freedom. But as the hours passed and no guards appeared at her door, Olivia began to suspect Gabriel had meant what he said about not being his prisoner. The windows weren't barred, the door wasn't locked. She could probably walk out the front entrance without anyone stopping her. The realization was almost more unsettling than chains would have been. "You're not eating," Gabriel observed from the doorway. Olivia looked up from the untouched dinner tray beside her on the bed. She'd been too busy planning escape routes to think about food. "I'm not hungry." "Your Wolf is, I can smell it." He was right, damn him. Wolf was practically clawing at her ribs, demanding sustenance and other things that involved the alpha male standing in her doorway with rolled-up sleeves and concern in his golden eyes. "Why aren't you pushing?" she asked instead of acknowledging her hunger. Most alphas would have already tried to complete the bond. Gabriel leaned against the doorframe, careful to keep his distance. Most alphas haven't had their mate run from them for 3 days straight. "You were hunting me." "I was looking for you." "There's a difference." "Is there?" Olivia pulled her knees to her chest. "Because from where I was sitting, it felt a lot like being prey." Something dark flickered across Gabriel's expression. "Tell me about the others." "What others?" "The alphas who taught you that protection and possession are the same thing." The observation was too close to the truth. Olivia's throat tightened. "What makes you think there were others?" "The way you flinch when I move too fast. The way you test every kindness for hidden traps." Gabriel's voice was gentle but relentless. "Someone hurt you, more than one someone." Victor, the name rose in her mind like bile. But he wasn't the only one. There had been others during her 3 years on the run. Alphas who'd offered shelter in exchange for submission. Protection for a price she'd refused to pay. "It doesn't matter," she said finally. "It matters to me." "Why, planning to hunt them down?" "Very alpha of you." Gabriel was quiet for a long moment. "My mother was human." The admission caught her off guard. "What?" "She was human. Met my father during a border skirmish. He was wounded, she was a field medic. Love at first sight, according to family legend." Gabriel's smile was sad around the edges. "The pack elders tried to block their mating, said wolf blood shouldn't be diluted. That human mates made alphas weak." "What happened?" "My father told them he'd rather abdicate than give her up. They backed down." Gabriel pushed off from the doorframe, moving to the window. "She died when I was 16 Cancer. Human fragility, the elders called it divine punishment for my father's poor choices." Understanding dawned slowly. "And you've been proving them wrong ever since, or trying to." He turned back to her. "The point is, I know what it feels like to have your worth questioned, to be seen as a mistake or a weakness instead of a gift." The raw honesty in his voice made her chest tight. Because she could see it now, the weight he carried, the constant pressure to be stronger, better, more than what people expected. "I'm not your mother," she said softly. "No, you're much more dangerous." "How so?" Gabriel's eyes found hers across the room. "Because she never had the power to bring down a kingdom." The words hung between them like a loaded gun. "What are you talking about?" "There's something I haven't told you, about why I was really looking for you." Ice formed in Olivia's veins. "Here it comes, the real reason you claimed me." "It's not what you think." "Then what is it?" Gabriel was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "There's a prophecy, an old one from before the packs were unified." He met her eyes. "It says that when the rogue claims the crown, kingdoms will either burn or bloom by her choice alone." The blood drained from Olivia's face. I think the moon goddess has a twisted sense of humor." Gabriel's laugh was humorless. "The most powerful pack leaders in North America all trying to catch one rogue wolf. Do you know what they were planning to do with you? Kill me, presumably. Worse, they were going to use you to legitimize a coup against my crown. Claim that your bloodline gives you the right to choose the next Alpha King." Olivia's world tilted sideways. "My bloodline? You didn't know." It wasn't a question. Gabriel could obviously read the shock on her face. "Olivia, your mother wasn't just any Chewolf. Elena Grey was the last of the Moonlight Pack, the original royal bloodline. Before unification, before the council system, her ancestors ruled all werewolves in North America." "That's impossible." But even as she said it, memories surfaced. Her mother's stories about old blood and ancient rites. The way other wolves had always deferred to Elena. Even when she had no pack to back her up. The way Victor had wanted her so desperately that he'd killed for her when she refused to abandon her mate. "The council thought the bloodline died out decades ago," Gabriel continued. "But then you surfaced, the lost princess, living as a rogue." "I'm not a princess," Olivia said numbly. "According to pack law, you are. And according to the prophecy, you're something much more dangerous." Gabriel crossed the room slowly, like he was approaching a spooked animal. "You're the one who gets to choose whether my kingdom survives." The weight of it settled on her shoulders like a lead blanket. "And if I choose wrong, then we all burn." Gabriel stopped in front of her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his skin. Close enough that the mate bond hummed with possibilities and promises. "So tell me, Olivia Grey," he whispered. "What are you going to choose?" Chapter 7, Underground Shadows. After Gabriel's bombshell about prophecies and royal bloodlines, Olivia needed air that didn't taste like destiny and obligation. The safe house felt smaller with each passing hour, its luxury transforming from comfort into suffocation. She'd escaped through the kitchen door while Gabriel took a council call, something about border disputes and pack unification treaties. King business that reminded her exactly how different their worlds were. Now she found herself in the forgotten tunnels beneath the city, where rogues like her had always gathered when the surface world became too dangerous. The smell of damp concrete and rust filled her nostrils, familiar as her own heartbeat. "Home, or what past 4 ET didn't expect to see you down here again." Olivia spun toward the voice, her hand instinctively reaching for the silver blade hidden in her boot. But the figure emerging from the shadows wasn't a threat, at least not the kind that required knives. "Kiran." Relief flooded through her as she recognized the lean wolf approaching. "I thought you'd moved territories." "Plan to." Then word started spreading about some rogue causing trouble topside. Kieran's grin was sharp as broken glass. "Imagine my surprise when I heard it was little Livy Gray." She winced at the nickname. Only Marcus had called her that. And Marcus was dead because of choices she'd made. "It's complicated," she said instead of explaining. "It always is with you." Kieran settled beside her on the concrete ledge, close enough that his warmth cut through the tunnel's chill. "Zul, rumor has it the Alpha King himself claimed you at Donovan's auction." Rumors travel fast. Faster when they involve royalty doing stupid things. Kieran studied her profile in the dim emergency lighting. "Question is, what are you doing down here instead of playing princess?" The question scraped against every raw nerve in her chest. Because the truth was complicated, messy, terrifying in ways she couldn't articulate. I don't know how to be what he needs, she admitted finally. Welches? A queen, a mate, someone worth fighting a war for. The words tasted bitter. I'm a rogue, Kiran. I've been running for 3 years. I don't know how to stay. Maybe that's exactly what he needs. Olivia looked at him in surprise. How do you figure? Think about E.T. Every other she-wolf he's met has wanted the crown more than the man wearing E.T. But you? Kiran's laugh was low, knowing. You'd probably throw the crown in the nearest river if someone handed it to you, in a heartbeat. That's why you're perfect for him. Before Olivia could respond, footsteps echoed through the tunnel. Multiple sets, moving with military precision. Hier Wolf bristled, recognizing the organized approach of trained killers. We need to move, Kiran whispered, already standing. Too late. The tunnel filled with armed figures in tactical gear, their scents masked by chemical suppressants. Professional hunters, the kind that specialized in capturing high-value targets alive. Olivia Gray, the leader's voice was electronically modified, impossible to identify. You're coming with us. Like hell she is. Kiran stepped protectively in front of her, his eyes already shifting to Wolf Amber. Stand down, Rouge. This doesn't concern you. Everything concerning her concerns me. The hunter's response was a tranquilizer dart to Kiran's neck. He dropped like a stone, unconscious, before he hit the concrete. No, Olivia lunged toward her friend, but strong hands caught her arms. He's alive, the leader said calmly. He'll stay that way if you come quietly. Olivia tested their grip, titanium cuffs designed specifically for shifters. Escape was impossible. Fight would only get Kiran killed. She'd already lost Marcus to her choices. She wouldn't lose Kiran too. Where are you taking me? Someone wants to meet you. Someone with answers about your bloodline that your new mate doesn't have. The mention of Gabriel sent ice through her veins. Because if these hunters knew about him, about the bond between them. If you hurt him, the Alpha King is perfectly safe, for now. The leader gestured to his team. Move out. As they dragged her deeper into the tunnel system, away from the surface and safety, one thought echoed in Olivia's mindestens: Gabriel would come for her. The mate bond guaranteed E.T. The question was whether she'd still be alive when he found her. Behind them, Kiran's unconscious form lay forgotten in the shadows. A message Gabriel would eventually find. A promise that this game was far from over. But as the hunters led her into darkness, Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking toward answers she'd spent 3 years running from. Answers about her mother's death. About the bloodline that made her valuable. About the prophecy that painted her as either salvation or destruction. The tunnel branched ahead, leading deeper underground. Leading toward truth that might destroy everything she thought she knew about her past and possibly her future. Chapter 8, The Hunt Begins. Following Olivia's disappearance from his safe house, Gabriel discovered that panic tasted like copper pennies and felt like claws raking down his spine. She was gone. Vanished without explanation, leaving only the lingering scent of wild roses and storm clouds to prove she'd ever been there. His Wolf was going insane. Find her. Akzeptiere. Bring her home. The primal commands echoed through his skull like a mantra, drowning out rational thought. Because rational thought led to possibilities he couldn't afford to consider. Like Olivia choosing to run rather than face whatever was building between them. Sua, his head of security, Commander Kane, appeared in the doorway. We've found something. Gabriel followed Kane to the kitchen, where security footage played on a tablet screen. Olivia moving through the space with fluid grace, pausing at the door, glancing back toward where Gabriel had been taking his call, then disappearing into the night. She left voluntarily, Kane observed, no signs of struggle. That doesn't mean she's safe. Gabriel's hands clenched involuntarily. How long? 4 hours, maybe 5. Too long. In 5 hours she could be anywhere in the city, or beyond it if she'd really decided to run. But something about her expression in the footage nagged at him. The way she'd hesitated at the door, like she was fighting herself, like leaving hurt. That wasn't the look of someone planning permanent escape. Expand the search grid, Gabriel ordered. Every safe house, every rogue territory, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. Gabriel answered without thinking. Yes? Your Majesty. The voice was electronically disguised, impossible to trace. We have something that belongs to you. Gabriel's blood turned to ice. If you've hurt her, she's alive, unharmed, for now. Static crackled across the line. But that could change quickly if you don't follow instructions exactly. What do you want? Meet us at the old Ashford warehouse, District 7, come alone or she dies. The line went dead. Gabriel stared at the phone, his wolf howling for blood. Because whoever had taken Olivia had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. They'd threatened his mate. Sir? Kane's voice seemed to come from far away. Ashford warehouse, District 7. Gabriel was already moving toward the weapons cabinet. I want satellite surveillance, sniper teams on every building within a mile radius, and tactical units on standby. Sir, if they said come alone, I am coming alone. Gabriel checked the clip in his service weapon, muscle memory taking over. But that doesn't mean I'm coming unprepared. 20 minutes later, Gabriel stood outside the abandoned warehouse that had once housed a meat-packing plant. The smell of old blood and decay hung in the air like a promise of violence. His wolf paced restlessly beneath his skin, desperate to shift and hunt. But whoever had taken Olivia was smart. They'd chosen a location with multiple exit routes and clear sight lines. A place where one wrong move could get her killed. Gabriel pushed through the rusted doors. The warehouse was empty except for hanging chains and the distant sound of dripping water. His footsteps echoed in the cavernous space as he moved deeper inside. Punctual, I like that in a king. The voice came from the shadows above. Gabriel looked up to see a figure in tactical gear perched on the old processing platform. Where is she? Safe, for now. The figure gestured to something behind Gabriel. He spun to find Olivia tied to a chair in the center of the warehouse floor, unconscious but breathing. Relief and rage roared in his chest as he took a step toward her. I wouldn't. The warning came with the distinctive sound of a rifle bolt sliding home. We need to talk first. Gabriel forced himself to stop, though every instinct screamed at him to reach her. What do you want? To prevent a war. The figure dropped down from the platform with inhuman grace. Do you know what your mate really is, King Gabriel? Enlighten me. She's a weapon, one that's been pointed at your crown for years. The hunter circled slowly, keeping the rifle trained on Olivia. The question is, are you prepared to pull the trigger? Gabriel's world tilted sideways. Explain. Elena Gray wasn't just royal blood. She was part of a resistance movement that wanted to overthrow the unified pact system. Return to the old ways, where bloodline determined leadership. The hunter's voice carried cruel satisfaction. Your father killed 12 resistance leaders. Elena's mate was among them. The revelation hit Gabriel like a physical blow. You're lying. Ask yourself, why would Victor Donovan want Elena so desperately? A simple she-wolf from a dead pack? The hunter laughed coldly. He wanted her because she carried the genetic key to challenging your family's right to rule. And Olivia is the last piece of the puzzle. With her backing, any alpha could challenge your crown and have legal standing. The hunter raised the rifle. So the question becomes, do you love her enough to risk your kingdom? Gabriel stared at Olivia's unconscious form, his heart tearing in two. Because even if everything the hunter said was true, even if she was a threat to everything he'd built, she was his mate. Yes, he said simply. The hunter's finger moved toward the trigger. That's when Gabriel's backup arrived. Chapter 9, Shattered Chains. Despite the chaos erupting around her, Olivia's first clear thought upon waking was that her head felt like someone had used it for batting practice. Her second was that Gabriel was in danger. The mate bond screamed warnings through her veins as gunfire echoed through the warehouse. She could smell his scent, pine and leather and barely controlled violence, mixed with the copper tang of spilt blood. Her wrists were zip-tied to the chair, but 3 years of survival had taught her useful skills. The hidden blade in her boot was still there, overlooked by whoever had searched her. Dislocating her thumb hurt like hell, but it let her slip the restraints. Gabriel, his name tore from her throat as she struggled upright. Stay down. His voice came from behind an overturned table 20 feet away. Olivia, stay down. But staying down had never been her strong suit. She dove for cover as bullets sparked off concrete around her, rolling behind a support beam. Her head spun from whatever drug they'd used, but adrenaline was burning it away fast. The hunter who'd been threatening Gabriel was dead. Gabriel's work, judging by the silver blade protruding from his chest. But there were others. At least 6 moving through the warehouse with military precision, professional killers. How many? She called out during a brief lull in gunfire. Too many. Gabriel's response was grim. My backup is pinned down outside. Olivia peered around the beam, counting muzzle flashes. 7 hostiles, not 6, all armed with automatic weapons and positioned to prevent escape. They weren't planning to take prisoners this time. Gabriel, she called out, an idea forming. Do you trust me? What? His voice carried alarm. Olivia, whatever you're thinking. Do you trust me? She repeated, a heartbeat of silence. Then, yes, good, because I'm about to do something really stupid. Before Gabriel could protest, Olivia was moving. Not toward safety, but toward the center of the warehouse, toward the hunters. Here, she shouted, arms raised in apparent surrender. I'm here, stop shooting. The gunfire ceased abruptly. 6 red laser dots converged on her chest as the hunters emerged from cover. Smart girl, the apparent leader called out. Saves us the trouble of digging you out. What do you want with me? Olivia asked, taking another step forward. Same thing everyone wants, Swiss art, to use you. For what? The leader smiled coldly, to bring down a king. Behind him, Gabriel was moving, silent as death, using her distraction to close the distance. But he wouldn't reach them in time, unless, Olivia said conversationally, you're not the first person to try using me as a weapon against Gabriel. Yeah, how'd that work out for them? Olivia's smile was sharp as winter moonlight. Why don't you ask Victor Donovan? The leader's expression shifted, confusion replacing confidence. Donovan's dead. I know, I killed him. The admission hung in the air like smoke. Because it was true, she had killed Victor Donovan, not in some grand battle or moment of heroic justice. Poisoned his morning coffee and watched him die slowly, painfully, while she explained exactly why Elena Grace's daughter had finally come for him. You're lying, the leader said, but uncertainty crept into his voice. Olivia let her wolf rise to the surface, let predator gleam in her green eyes. How do you think a 17-year-old rogue survived 3 years on her own? By being nice? The hunter's grip on his weapon shifted nervously. That's when Gabriel struck. The fight lasted exactly 37 seconds, Olivia counted, because watching Gabriel move in combat was like watching poetry written in violence. He flowed between opponents like water, each strike precise and lethal. When the last hunter dropped, silence settled over the warehouse like a shroud. Olivia, Gabriel's voice was rough with adrenaline and relief as he crossed to her. Are you hurt? I'm fine, but her hands were shaking as reaction set in. Gabriel, what they said about my mother doesn't matter. He reached for her, then stopped, his expression uncertain. Unless, does it matter to you? The question hit deeper than any bullet could have, because he was asking if she would choose her bloodline over him. If the revelations about her past would drive them apart. My mother was a lot of things, Olivia said quietly, but she loved my father. Not for politics or bloodlines or resistance movements, she loved him. She met Gabriel's golden eyes, that's the legacy I want to honor. Relief flooded his features. So when I say this doesn't change anything between us, it doesn't. She stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his skin. But Gabriel, next time someone kidnaps me to get to you? Yes, maybe trust that I can handle myself. His laugh was shaky with leftover adrenaline, noted. As sirens wailed in the distance, his backup finally breaching the perimeter, Gabriel pulled her against his chest. The mate bond hummed with satisfaction, stronger now after shared danger. But questions still lingered in the shadows between them. Who had ordered her kidnapping? Why reveal her mother's past now? And what did it mean for their future if others shared the hunter's belief that she was a weapon pointed at his crown? Olivia pushed the worries aside, for now they were alive, together, safe. Tomorrow's problems could wait until tomorrow. Tonight, she just wanted to go home. Chapter 10, Caged Bird. Following their violent rescue from the warehouse, Olivia discovered that Gabriel's idea of keeping her safe involved locking her in a fortress disguised as a penthouse. 24-hour guards, bulletproof windows, security cameras that tracked her every movement. A gilded cage was still a cage. This is insane, she muttered, pacing the marble floors for the 100th time in 3 days. Wolf was going stir-crazy, clawing at her ribs with the need to run. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city sprawled beneath them like a glittering web. Freedom, just 60 stories away and completely unreachable. The perimeter is secure. Gabriel's voice carried from the entrance hall where he was briefing Commander Kane. No one gets in or out without my authorization, including her, apparently. Olivia pressed her palms against the cool glass, watching traffic move like blood through concrete arteries. Somewhere down there, wolves were living their lives, hunting, mating, choosing their own paths, while she was trapped like some precious artifact. You're plotting escape routes again. Gabriel's reflection appeared behind hers in the window. Can you blame me? She didn't turn around because looking at him made thinking impossible. 3 days of forced proximity had only intensified the mate bond's pull. I'm going insane up here. It's temporary until we identify who sent those hunters. It's been 3 days. The words exploded from her chest. 3 days of sitting here like bait while you play protector. Gabriel moved closer, his heat warming her back. Would you rather be dead? I'd rather be living. She spun to face him, anger blazing in her chest. This isn't protection, Gabriel. It's imprisonment. There's a difference? Yes, protection means you trust me to help defend myself. This means you see me as something fragile that needs hiding. Gabriel's jaw tightened. You are not fragile. Then why am I locked in a tower? Because, he stopped, running hands through his dark hair. Because I can't lose you. The raw honesty in his voice shattered her anger like glass against stone. Because she could see it now, the fear he was trying to hide behind authority and control. Gabriel, she reached for him, fingers brushing his cheek. You can't protect me by making me invisible. I can try. And what happens when the next threat comes? Will you lock me away again? She searched his golden eyes. How many cages will you build before you realize they won't work? Before Gabriel could answer, alarm shrieked through the penthouse. Red lights bathed the room in bloody illumination as Kane's voice crackled over the intercom. Sir, we have a breach on level 45. Multiple hostiles moving up the stairwells. Gabriel was moving before the words finished, grabbing weapons from the hidden wall panel. Stay here, lock the safe room door and don't come out until no, Olivia caught his arm. We face this together. Olivia, together, Gabriel. Or I swear I'll throw myself off this balcony before I hide in another cage. Golden eyes searched her face, finding the steel beneath her words. Finally, he nodded and handed her a silver blade. Stay behind me. Stay beside you, she corrected. The sound of gunfire echoed up the elevator shaft as they moved toward the stairwell. How many enemies? How had they breached Gabriel's security? And why did this feel like more than just another kidnapping attempt? Through the steel door, footsteps pounded closer. Too many to count, too organized to be random mercenaries. Gabriel, she whispered, understanding hitting like ice water. This isn't about capturing me. What? They're not here to take me, her wolf bristled with certainty. They're here to kill us both. The door exploded inward in a shower of metal and fire. And suddenly, the war Olivia had been running from for 3 years was no longer something she could escape. It had found her. Chapter 11, The Prophecy Revealed. Following the explosive assault on his supposedly impregnable penthouse, Gabriel realized that someone with inside knowledge had orchestrated this attack. The breach points, the timing, the precise locations of his security measures. This was betrayal from within his own ranks. But those concerns became secondary when he saw the woman stepping through the smoke and debris. Hello, nephew. Cassandra Thorne moved like liquid death through the ruined doorway, flanked by a dozen mercenaries in tactical gear. His father's sister, the aunt who'd vanished 20 years ago after challenging his coronation. Cassie, Gabriel kept his weapon trained on her Santa Mass. I thought you were dead. Disappointed, her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. I've been very much alive, Gabriel. Waiting, planning, building the coalition that will finally restore proper order to our kind. Behind him, Olivia shifted, silver blade glinting in the emergency lighting. Gabriel could smell her readiness, his mate preparing for war. What do you want? What I've always wanted, the crown that should have been mine. Cassandra's eyes flicked to Olivia. And to prevent the prophecy from destroying everything our family built. The prophecy is about her. Cassandra cut him off. The lost bloodline that will either elevate our kingdom or reduce it to ash. Did you really think claiming Elena Gray's daughter would end well? Gabriel's grip tightened on his weapon. Olivia isn't a threat to anyone. Isn't she? Cassandra laughed, the sound like breaking belts. Tell me, nephew. What happens when the other pack leaders realize you've made it with the one wolf who has legal standing to challenge every territorial agreement we've made? Every treaty, every alliance, every carefully balanced power structure depends on bloodline legitimacy. The words hit Gabriel like physical blows because they contained just enough truth to be dangerous. That's not, she doesn't even know, does she? Cassandra's gaze fixed on Olivia. Poor little rogue, still believing she's nobody special. Know what? Olivia's voice was deadly quiet. That your mother wasn't just royal blood, she was the true royal blood. The last daughter of the Moonlight dynasty that ruled before unification. Cassandra's smile was poison sweet. Which makes you the rightful alpha queen of all North America. The revelation dropped like a bomb in the smoking penthouse. Gabriel felt Olivia's shock through the mate bond. Confusion, denial, and something that might have been terror. You're lying, Olivia whispered. Am I? Ask yourself why Victor Donovan wanted your mother so desperately. Why James sent hunters after you specifically? Why every pack leader with ambition has been searching for Elena Gray's lost daughter? Gabriel's mind raced through implications. If Cassandra was telling the truth, the prophecy, he said slowly. Finally catching up? Cassandra's mercenaries shifted, weapons trained on both of them. When the rogue claims the crown, kingdoms burn or bloom by her choice. The question is, which will she choose? Gabriel looked at Olivia, seeing his own shock reflected in her green eyes. Because if she truly was the legitimate heir to pre-unification rule, she could dissolve the pack system entirely. He breathed, or strengthen it by choosing the right mate. Cassandra's eyes glittered with ambition. Unfortunately, she chose. The gunfire started without warning. Gabriel threw himself sideways, pulling Olivia behind the overturned couch as bullets chewed through marble and steel. His security team was returning fire from the stairwell, but they were outnumbered 3-1. We need to move, he shouted over the chaos. Where? Olivia's blade was already bloodied. She'd taken down 2 mercenaries while he'd been processing revelations. The safe room has a private elevator. If we can reach it, Gabriel, her voice stopped him cold. If what she said is true, if I really am, it doesn't matter. He met her eyes across the war zone of his destroyed home. Whatever you are, whoever you're meant to be, you're my mate. That's the only truth I care about. Relief flickered across her features. Even if it costs you your crown? Especially then. Olivia's smile was fierce as starlight. Then let's get out of here so I can decide what to do with mine. They moved as one toward the safe room, fighting through smoke and gunfire while Cassandra's voice echoed behind them. You can't run from destiny, Gabriel. The prophecy will find you both. But as they reached the elevator in safety, Gabriel realized the most terrifying part wasn't what Olivia might choose to do with her newfound power, it was that now everyone would be hunting them. Because a lost princess was dangerous enough. A lost princess made it to the current king? That was revolution waiting to happen. Chapter 12, Bonds and Betrayals. Following their narrow escape from Gabriel's compromised penthouse, Olivia found herself in a place she'd never imagined. Sitting in an underground bunker while the most powerful wolves in North America debated whether to kill her or crown her. The emergency council meeting was taking place in a reinforced conference room beneath the city, where pack leaders could gather without fear of surveillance or attack. Gabriel sat at the head of the massive oak table, every inch the Alpha King, despite having lost his primary residence to his treacherous aunt. Olivia perched in the corner like a caged predator, watching 12 territorial alphas argue about her fate. The bloodline claim has merit, Alpha Morrison was saying, his weathered face grim. But accepting it would invalidate every treaty we've signed in the past 50 years. Which might not be a bad thing, Alpha Chen countered. Some of those treaties were signed under duress, and some were signed to prevent war. Alpha Rodriguez slammed her palm on the table. Do we really want to return to the chaos of the old days? Gabriel's voice cut through the arguments like a blade. The question isn't whether Olivia's bloodline is legitimate, it is. The question is, what we do about it. We eliminate the threat, Alpha Blackwood suggested quietly. One rogue wolf isn't worth destabilizing the entire pack system. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees as Gabriel's power unfurled like a living thing. Say that again, Gabriel, Olivia's voice carried clearly across the tension. May I speak? 12 pairs of eyes turned toward her, some curious, others openly hostile. Because to them, she wasn't a person, she was a problem that needed solving. The floor is yours, Gabriel said formally. Olivia stood slowly, feeling the weight of prophecy and bloodline and destiny settling on her shoulders like a mantle. You're all afraid of what I might do, what choices I might make, whether I'll use my birthright to tear down what you've built. Nods around the table. At least they were honest about their fear. But here's what none of you understand. She moved to the center of the room, letting her wolf rise close enough to the surface that every alpha felt it. I don't want your crown, I never did. Then what do you want? Alpha Morrison asked. To be left alone, to choose my own mate, my own path, my own life. Her eyes found Gabriel's across the room. But you won't let me, will you? Silence stretched out as understanding dawned. Because even if I renounce all claims to royal blood, even if I reject the prophecy and walk away from everything, there will always be someone who sees me as a weapon. Olivia's smile was sharp as winter wind. Someone who thinks they can use Elena Gray's daughter to legitimize their own grab for power. So what are you proposing? Alpha Chen leaned forward. A new kind of treaty, one that acknowledges bloodline rights while strengthening pack unity. Olivia looked around the table, meeting each alpha's gaze. I formally recognize Gabriel Thorne as the rightful Alpha King of North America. Gasps echoed around the room. But, she continued, I also claim my right as mate bond partner to stand beside him as equal, not as property to be protected, but as Alpha Queen with full authority. The implications hit like lightning strikes. A queen with independent bloodline authority could challenge any alpha's territorial claims, could override pack law in favor of older, deeper rights, could reshape the entire power structure of their world. You're talking about revolution, Alpha Blackwood breathed. I'm talking about evolution. Olivia's gaze found Gabriel's, seeing understanding in something that might have been pride in his golden eyes. The old ways failed because they relied on conquest and dominance. The new ways are failing because they ignore justice and choice. And your way? Gabriel asked softly. Combines the best of both. Royal bloodline with elected leadership. Ancient rights with modern agreements, tradition with progress. She smiled at the man who'd claimed her heart along with her freedom. What do you think, my king? Ready to share your crown? Gabriel stood slowly, power radiating from every line of his body. I've been waiting my whole life for a partner, not a subject. Is that a yes? That's a hell yes. Around the table, the alphas exchanged glances heavy with calculation and possibility, because what Olivia was proposing would change everything. But it might also save them from the civil war that had been brewing since the day she'd stepped onto that auction platform. All in favor, Gabriel called. Hands rose slowly around the table. Not all of them. Alpha Blackwood and 2 others remained seated, but it was enough. Motion carries. Gabriel's smile was fierce with satisfaction. Gentlemen and ladies, meet your new Alpha Queen. Outside the bunker, Cassandra's revolution was gathering steam. Other kingdoms would challenge this new power structure. Wars would be fought, alliances tested, blood spilt. But for the first time since her mother's death, Olivia felt like she was exactly where she belonged, standing beside the man she loved, ready to fight for a future worth choosing. Chapter 13, Blood and Betrayal. Moving forward from the Emergency Council's historic vote, Olivia discovered that becoming Alpha Queen meant inheriting enemies she'd never known existed. The first assassination attempt came at dawn, 3 silver bullets through the reinforced windows of their temporary safe house. The message was crystal clear: someone wanted her dead before the coronation ceremony could make her reign official. Stay low, Gabriel growled, pulling her behind the overturned dining table as more gunfire erupted from the building across the street. His protective instincts had shifted into overdrive since the council vote, turning him into a barely controlled predator. I'm getting really tired of people shooting at me, Olivia muttered, checking the ammunition in her stolen pistol. 3 days as queen-elect, and she'd already survived more murder attempts than most royals faced in a lifetime. Welcome to pack politics. Gabriel's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Kane, report. 6 shooters on the rooftop, 2 more in the alley. The commander's voice crackled through their earpieces. They've got the building surrounded. Professional killers again, because apparently every alpha with ambition thought murdering the new queen would solve their territorial disputes. Any word from our friend Cassandra? Olivia asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Radio silence since the bunker raid, but intelligence suggests she's building a coalition of traditionalist alphas who see your bloodline as. The building shook as something exploded on the floor below them. Smoke poured through the ventilation system, carrying the acrid stench of phosphorus and burning metal. Time to go, Gabriel decided. But as they moved toward the emergency exit, Olivia's enhanced hearing caught something that made her blood freeze. Footsteps in the stairwell, too light, too familiar. Gabriel, wait. The door burst open, revealing not mercenaries but someone far more dangerous. Marcus stepped through the smoke, very much alive and pointing a military-grade rifle at Gabriel's chest. Hello, Livy. The world tilted sideways. Because Marcus, loyal, protective Marcus, who'd supposedly died saving her, was standing there with murder in his eyes and a weapon trained on her mate. You're dead, she whispered. Sorry to disappoint. His smile held no warmth, only the cold satisfaction of a trap finally springing shut. Though I have to admit, watching you grieve was almost worth the inconvenience of staying hidden. Gabriel's body coiled like a spring, but Marcus shifted his aim before he could move. Easy, Your Majesty. One twitch and I paint these walls with your royal blood. Marcus, what the hell? What the hell am I doing alive? Or what the hell am I doing pointing a gun at your precious king? Marcus's laugh was bitter as winter wind. Take your pick, Livy. They're both interesting stories. Olivia's mind raced through possibilities, each one worse than the last. Because if Marcus was alive, if he'd been working with their enemies all along. You sold me out, she breathed. I saved you, his voice turned sharp. Do you have any idea what Gabriel Thorne really is? What his family did to ours? Our family? Gabriel's voice was deadly quiet. Elena Gray wasn't just Olivia's mother, King Gabriel. She was my sister. Marcus's eyes blazed with old fury. And your father murdered her mate, my brother-in-law, during the Shadow War purges. The revelation hit like a sledgehammer, because suddenly everything made sense. Marcus's protectiveness, his knowledge of her mother's past, his convenient disappearance when Gabriel had started hunting her. You've been planning this for years, Olivia said numbly. Since the day I watched Thomas Grady in a Thorne family prison cell, Marcus's finger tightened on the trigger. Since your mother begged Victor Donovan for protection because she had nowhere else to turn. That doesn't justify what? Saving you from repeating her mistakes. Marcus stepped closer, weapon never wavering. Gabriel Thorne is using you, Livy, just like his father used your mother. Just like every alpha uses every woman unfortunate enough to carry royal blood. Gabriel's voice cut through the accusations like a blade. If you're going to kill me, at least have the courage to do it without hiding behind lies. Lies, Marcus's laugh was harsh. Tell her about the breeding program, Gabriel. Tell her about the genetic testing your father ordered on royal bloodline females.